All right. So I think I hit stream. I think we went live at it was 12:01. So I'm gonna find out here. Cool. So I think I got audio. Okay. Stream. Right on. I think we went live at. Sorry. 12. That's not what I want. There we go. I want my live stream to go. I don't want to be hearing my live stream. There's Paul. We'll get to Paul. All right. I'm going to kind of settle myself. Sorry, I've got something in my mouth. My mom would be really disappointed in me if I was doing some public speaking with something in my mouth. You're not supposed to do that. It's the wrong thing to do. All right. Hey, Saturday. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm chilling. I don't usually stream on Saturdays. My schedule is completely messed up, and that's okay. There's reasons for that. And it gives me an opportunity to kind of try something new. So, welcome in. If you're catching this after the fact, I'll try to put some chapters up so you can skip through the banter at the beginning if you want to and get to the content, whatever you want to call that. The conversation is what I'll call it. The dialogue, and I guess maybe that's where we will begin this morning as I kind of situate myself around the two videos that I did in the past week. And essentially this is what I'm doing, sort of I try to create dialogues, and then because there's always more to say, I like to do these live streams and sort of catch up and pick up anything that I've left out. Lynn, good to see you. Going fishing sounds awesome. Yeah, I know. Like I said, I normally don't stream on Saturdays, probably for that reason. You know, I want to go fishing. So, but that's the way it worked out for me. Thanks for saying hi, and yeah, enjoy. Good luck catching those fish. So, love it. And that's what it's about, man. That's what that's the thing. You know, I don't usually go into the area of sort of apologetics. I want to build dialogue. And why do I want to build dialogue? I want to build dialogue because dialogue is how we as people connect. We share stories. We refine our stories. We listen to stories. It refines who we are as people, as we listen to each other, as we disagree with one another, and yet still maintain a relationship. And that's something that we've lost in our modern culture. And so when I started a YouTube channel, I started it out of a desire to continue a great conversation, a conversation that we've seen throughout history, whether it's in books, philosophy, and what have you. Today, this is the modern attempt at sort of perpetuating that dialogue. And so I actually started the week off with Joe Rogan. I don't think I'll say much on the Joe Rogan, other than I think it was a really interesting conversation between Joe Rogan and James Lindsay. Again, sort of documenting the spiritual journey that Joe Rogan has been on over the past year. I'll leave a playlist, but if you want to find the Joe Rogan playlist, it's somewhere in here there. Yeah. And there are videos on that. Let's see. Let's go ahead and look.
Are you constantly overwhelmed with your workload? Look at this discussion.
I want to look at the playlist. Oh, well. So, well, there it is. And you can see how many videos, 27. So there you go. There's a whole catalog going all the way back to over a year ago with Adam Curry, which is actually where I thought this whole thing with Joe Rogan started. And you sort of pick it up with James Lindsay, and I'm sure that it'll continue, and I'll do my best to sort of document Joe's sort of spiritual quest as it is, because I think it's fascinating. I think there's something to the fact that one of the largest podcasts has that going on, right? That has it, has this sort of spirituality, even Christianity. Joe has sort of softened his his take on Christianity over the years and what have you. And so it's just interesting to see what you're seeing play out with Joe Rogan is the development of his ideas. And I think that that's fascinating. I appreciate the fact that he has invited us into that process. And I think that he is a good dialogue partner. I think that's why his podcast is popular, because he doesn't agree with James Lindsay, but he has James Lindsay on. And him and James Lindsay can carry on a conversation that is productive and meaningful. And that's what I hope to do. That's what I hope to do on this podcast. I'm glad you guys are with me for that journey. So in a way, you'll see my ideas develop through time. I think actually being on this medium has helped me refine a lot of my ideas, which takes me to the Alex O'Connor video. Let's see, we'll get another ad if I play it, which is I'll get YouTube premiums at some point. But takes me to the Alex O'Connor, William Lane Craig conversation. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I said this in the podcast. I mean, I have a lot of respect for William Lane Craig. I think this was the least impressed I've ever been with William Lane Craig. And I say that being aware of the body of work that he has put out there. And I appreciate that work that he's done a lot. But he kind of had this face the whole time. He just who's that quote? Was it Voltaire or somebody who said, if you are of the redeemed, why doesn't your face show it? And it's like, yeah, I mean, I have this same affect sometimes. I just walk around scowling because I focus very deeply on whatever it is that I'm trying to think about. And it's unfortunate because I scowl and I do kind of sound like I'm mean, and I'm aware of that. But yeah, just Craig did not come across as hearing Alex O'Connor. That's why I ended up making a video that I wouldn't otherwise make, that kind of tends towards the apologetics world that I'm from. I have a history in apologetics. That's where I came across William Lane Craig. His debate with Anthony Flew is fascinating for anybody that wants to watch this. This is a fascinating debate. Now, I say that it's 100 million years old. I mean, I don't know how old this, Craig is young, Flew is old. And so in a way, you almost have the reversal of what's going on with Alex O'Connor. Alex O'Connor is sort of this young, bright philosopher. William Lane Craig is sort of this old, he's very formed as in his philosophy. And I think that that's what didn't benefit Craig in this conversation is there wasn't a level of flexibility. He came defending one thing. And I don't know if that's, I don't want to sound like ageist or something like that, but it's just over time, you wear a groove, and it's harder for you to get out of that groove. So you see William Lane Craig now in his older years talking to Alex O'Connor. And if this was a debate, if this was like the Craig Flew debate, and you were to ask me, okay, who won the debate? So here's William Lane Craig. When was this? It's going to bug me. 1998. I thought they debated multiple times, but there's Anthony Flew, sort of the pre-Dawkins type of figure, atheist, philosopher. And they had a very respectful debate. But this is obviously Craig in his younger years. And so now you see Craig in his older years talking to a young philosopher. It's interesting to see the development, again, over time, just like we were talking about with Joe Rogan. And I think that if I was in this audience, let's say, if this conversation here, because hopefully this was a conversation. It's funny, I've got Paul Vanderklay pulled up here because there was another conversation between Jordan Peterson and Destiny that I thought sort of mirrored this conversation between Alex O'Connor and William Lane Craig. I didn't think Jordan Peterson had a good showing. I didn't watch all of this. I watched the first bit, but I don't know. It was just Jordan Peterson was just like in a cantankerous mood. He's got all these people just frustrating him or whatever. I mean, he's got his jacket, and he's got this nice jacket on, as he has been doing. But and of course he has Destiny on, because Destiny's an interesting figure. I mean, as we talk about the dialogue that's going on in internet spaces, Destiny, who's a streamer, is very attuned to that world. And I thought he actually had some really good comments here, and I sort of posted a thread. Eventually I'll get to this thread, and hopefully that'll keep me in line and I won't wander off too much. But it was interesting that these two dialogues came out the same week, right? What was this? March 17th. And one day ago, so March 22nd. And although I would say I tend to agree more with William Lane Craig, if this was a debate, I would have said Alex O'Connor. I would have put my vote to Alex O'Connor. I would have said Alex O'Connor did a better job. Now, did Alex O'Connor convince me of his position? No. I think he very, like, whether it was disingenuous or not, I mean, it looked like he set William Lane Craig up to not be able to engage in the text that he was referring to. And I'll get to that. But he didn't convince me of his position. But walking away, I would say that Alex O'Connor sort of won the debate, if it was a debate. Now, thankfully, it's a conversation, and hopefully we will be able to learn from this conversation. But it was just funny that, in a way, I'm kind of like sitting here nodding along to Destiny, and then when Jordan Peterson talks, I'm like, stop. Stop being such a grumpy old man. Sorry, this stream already a few times I've felt like I've been sort of critical. I have a lot of respect for these men who are older than myself, and we'll go ahead and give Paul a better look here. Okay, we'll give Paul we're giving Paul a better look. Shoot, and I guess I lost my spot there, and now we're playing an ad, of course. Let's see, I was trying to be kind to Paul, because I'm trying to honor those who have gone before me and accumulated masses of wisdom that I now glean from, and not sound so critical of like Jordan Peterson and William Lane Craig for being kind of, in a way, maybe ingrained in what they were. So I think Alex O'Connor came across better, and there are definitely parts of this where I was nodding along to Destiny as well. So there you go. That is why, for me, I did not go into the realm of apologetics when I started a YouTube channel. And in fact, this is reasonablefaith.org, and you notice comments are turned off. This is Craig's YouTube channel. This is William Lane Craig's YouTube channel. Comments are turned off. And when I thought about creating a YouTube channel, I thought, well, if I'm going to create a YouTube channel for the purpose of dialogue, I need comments. I need you to talk to me. I need this to not be so one-sided. But I'm looking at this sort of like, world-class Christian philosopher and apologist, who's using this tool, this digital media tool, for his ministry, for his purposes, and yet he can't have comments turned on. Why? Well, largely for the same reason that my if you look at the comments of this video, I mean, I don't know how many comments I have at this point, and I've tried to engage in some of them, but some of them are just kind of nasty. So, like, I don't delete comments. People that I disagree with that come to my channel that leave comments, and some of them are kind of gross. Like, I tend to leave those comments, and I try to engage with them as best as I can, and then I leave them for you to engage with as well, because that's part of dialogue. But there were some comments that I had to delete on this video, which is really sad. The Craig haters and the God haters descended on my channel to try to convert me to their position using their winsome, it wasn't winsome. It was kind of gross, which is so funny because that's what Alex O'Connor basically tells William Lane Craig is your theology is gross. It's abhorrent. It's your God is this murderer, and he sort of takes this moral high ground that honestly Craig didn't engage. Like and that's why I think Craig kept trying to bring it back to his divine command morality position. That honestly just came, and if you read the comments of this video, it just came across as, of course, if you hate God, then God's divine command morality sounds abhorrent to you. So you don't win people by just sticking to that. I think he would have come off better if he had listened to Alex a little bit more and heard the sense of sort of moral outrage that he has reading these texts. Now, I think he completely avoided the context of the passages, Alex did, because they didn't lend to his point that he was trying to make. And I think that was where Alex made a mistake. I think if you're going to use a text as a proof text to say, this is why I can't believe in your God, then do the hard work and look at the text, and he just doesn't. And even the first passage that he references is from Deuteronomy 20. And he references this, like, only in the cities of these people that the Lord your God has given into you and your inheritance, you shall not leave alive anything that breathes. And that sounds really horrible. And I agree with you, out of context, it sounds very horrible. But if you just go 6 verses up, you shall go into this city and you shall offer peace. But if they don't make peace, if they agree to peace, then make peace. If they do not make peace with you, but make war against you, then you shall make war. That is what God, that's the standard by which you have to judge this passage that Alex is quoting. But he doesn't do that because it doesn't lend to his argument. This idea that God is horrible and God's a murderer. Well, sorry, but 6 verses up, you have a God of peace. So now what do? Well, you realize that it's a difficult passage to interpret, but at least now we're not using it as a pretext. That's where I thought Alex kind of lost. If William Lane Craig had a Bible in front of him, I think it would have gone a lot differently. So, thank you, Cogswheel. I appreciate that. How do I respond to people who are using arguments of evil when they use evil in the animal kingdom, suffering that doesn't make sense, children dying, etc.? Yeah, and that's I appreciate that question. It is hard, and I think that's where I ultimately I sort of landed in my video was this is difficult, and I hope that I didn't open up the can and not sufficiently give people sort of ways of grappling with that. Because Deja, your comment to me puts the conversation about the conquest of Canaan in a much broader context of the problem of evil, and you're exactly right. We read these things in the Bible and we go, man, that sounds bad. And to me, the larger context of the problem of evil points to the person of Jesus Christ. That's where I go, and I'm not out here. It's funny. This experience that I had making this video, it is so funny to me because I have a lot of people who seem to hate God, trying to convince me that God doesn't exist. And they sound like they care very deeply that I'm trapped in some ideology, and they want to convert me to what they see is their better ideology. And so it's kind of funny. I'm being evangelized by these atheists who don't believe in God. And so why do they care that I do believe in God? Why do they care? And maybe we'll unpack that a little bit as we go into this stream. But I think you're exactly right. I think it fits within the larger context of the problem of evil. And for me, that goes to the person of Jesus. Yeah, and exactly. And that's where I don't get it. From the atheist perspective, why is suffering bad? Why is the conquest of Canaan so repugnant to an atheist who, I think, and I don't want to straw man the atheist position here, but if I understand it right, there's no God, so morality is a social construct. So, I mean, sorry, it sounds like the stronger wins. Is that wrong? How could I judge if that's wrong? Israel seems to be, well, and it's so funny because Israel is actually, Canaan is in a defensible position and Israel is not. So in a way, Israel is the weaker force. And they're trying to besiege Canaan and these cities. And so they're at a disadvantage, which is why God, particularly in Joshua 8, which Alex also references, he gives a specific plan for how you're going to take the city. And if there's no God, what's the problem with that? Like, I don't it's just, that's where my brain short circuits. I care. I'm a Christian. And so I listen to people who don't believe in God, people who hate God, people who whatever. And I go, man, I deeply care about you. Why? Because I think you're created in God's image for a purpose. And I think the greatest joy in life is to be in harmony with the purpose of your creator who created you for that purpose. And so I want to see people come into harmony with God. Now, but that's on you. Like I'm not here being an apologist. I'm not here trying to convince anybody of my position. I will give you my position. But the reason I care is that I think you're a child of God. But the atheists who descended on my channel, and I say descended, I say that's like bad. Let me just, I mean, there were actually there is a at least one comment that I do want to cover. And thank you. Like I would say probably 75% of the comments were from, Alex O'Connor fanboys is what I call them on Twitter, which is maybe not polite, but then you guys that are here and you're supporting the channel and you kind of see the project that we're all sort of participating in. I just love that. There was one that I thought was really a good attempt at dialogue, and maybe we will cover that one. But yeah, maybe I'll go back to my Twitter thread and try to keep my comments, keep my mind straight here. But it was just funny that it's like, why do you care? Why do you care that I believe in a God that you don't think exists? God, you're saying God doesn't exist, so you should stop believing in a God that doesn't exist. It's like, well, what? Anyway, it sounded like a lot of Christian charity coming from these atheists who are deeply concerned about my beliefs and wanted to sort of convert me to their, save me out of my ignorance, All right, I'm going to catch up on these comments. I appreciate you guys being here. And again, this would be me trying to rescue what would otherwise be sort of a cantankerous, unproductive apologetics debate into a dialogue, which I do think is beneficial. So I appreciate you guys being here. Yeah, what is evil? If evil exists, then what is good by which you are comparing that evil? Yeah, and so it's funny because in trying to judge the Bible for its morality, you have to smuggle in the biblical Christian morality, or the biblical morality that comes from God, to judge the Bible with it. And that was the point where I thought Destiny, in his conversation with Jordan Peterson, nailed it. It's like oftentimes people wield these swords, but they never turn the sword in on themselves to examine their own ideas. That's what I felt Alex and some of these people were doing. And when you look at the problem of evil, you're acknowledging that you live in this world that must have some sense of good and evil. And therefore, and if you kind of get into the philosophy of it, good is primary and evil is secondary. And so you kind of look at, okay, so who would then have created the greatest good? You think of a being who would have infinite power to create goodness, who would have infinite power, and because you can't have an effect without being in the cause, like you can't have something good. Let's see. What's that cause and effect idea? It's like something can't exist in the effect that doesn't also exist in the thing causing it. So if we perceive goodness, the thing that caused the goodness must in itself be good. So we have this infinite good creator. It's like, well, then you're just at biblical theology at that point. Yeah, but they want certainty. Yeah, Christian, I think you're right. I think there is this sense, and I do see that in some of the comments. It's like, abandon these primitive mythologies for science. Science is certain. It's like, really? How's that working out for you? How certain is it these days? So, but yeah, we're uncomfortable with the mystery and the uncertainty in our modernism. We sort of go, oh, well, how, you believe in these like myths. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, define myth, so, and you could go back to I got a clip of Martin Shaw at some point, and I'll mess up the quote, but myths are, stories without the use of facts, and that doesn't mean that the stories are not true. Some of them maybe are, and some of them have deeper truths. I think that's what Martin Shaw is pointing at, is that when you communicate through story, even if you're making up the story, let's say it's Tom Sawyer or something like that, you're communicating a deeper truth than the question is, well, was Tom Sawyer a real person? He's not a real person, so I can't learn anything from him. He's a made-up person. Well, okay, you could live in that world, and that's a sad world. Or you could just read the story and realize it's pointing to a deeper truth. So I think that was Martin Shaw's point. I got to slow down, take a breath. I appreciate you guys being here as I sort of, if I pass out live on stream, somebody rescue me. Thank you guys for being here as I enter into this sort of therapy session with myself. Yeah, when I go to the gym, my muscles suffer, but is that evil? Yeah, man. Well, man, it's really unfortunate that this William Lane Craig didn't show up to this conversation. And again, I hope that doesn't sound bad, but I feel like when I look at Craig and Flew having this debate, I mean, he's just he comes to the point where he says. He acknowledges that what Anthony Flew is saying is basically similar to what Alex O'Connor is saying. I can't believe in this God because this God sounds so bad to me. And Anthony Flew points to the suffering that exists in the world. And what does William Craig do? He says, yeah, suffering does exist in this world, but the purpose of life is not freedom from suffering. The purpose of life is to know and to worship your Creator in harmony with your Creator. And suffering can be a means through which you understand God more clearly. Now, of course, the atheists, the God haters are going to hear that and cringe mightily. Oh, get to know God through suffering. Well, suffering exists. It's part of this world. And you could either grow through it, or you can let it turn you into a bitter, frustrated human being who doesn't see any purpose in the suffering. So you take the example of your muscles in the gym and you're like, yeah, there you go. It's written into the story of this world. You see a microcosm of it as you get stronger, as your physical body gets stronger. It's painful, but then there's growth. Okay, what's that telling me? Maybe emotional strength is similar to that. That if I can, by some means, get through my suffering and still be a whole person, and then maybe I would grow. And Dan Allender has just a fantastic book on this subject. It's called The Healing Path. And I mean, basically, he lays that out. Like, don't waste your pain. And what's unfortunate is I think that there are some people who have a lot of pain, and it's sort of being wasted. Spoke to an atheist a couple of days ago, kept coming up with the facts that Jacob fought God, which shouldn't be possible because nobody can see God. Yeah, well, it's possible when God... I need to do a whole Jesus in the Old Testament thing because I love, like, Melchizedek. It's just fascinating stuff. If God chooses, if God wants to descend and wrestle with Jacob, God can. Why? Because he created this world. We live in his world and we play his game. Like, he set the rules to this game. And that's the frustration that I think a lot of people who want to deny God live in. They live with this cognitive dissonance that they want to, the thing that should really cause people to pursue God and look to God for answers is the thing that they're trying to use to disbelieve in God. Like morality. Like, look at what God did in the Bible. How evil is this God of yours? Well, okay, where did you get that idea? Well, I got it from the Bible, or from the world that God created, So, okay. All right. It gets hot. It gets hot in this room, and I get all worked up when I do this. So, appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. Okay. It was an angel. Yeah, I mean, in the Old Testament, yeah, it's the angel of the Lord. It's the angel of the Lord. It's this sort of, and then there's a question, and I'm probably not prepared well enough to go into it, but it's this sort of prefigure of Christ. You can go back into the garden. There's this, and whether they're anthropomorphisms, I don't know, but the Bible describes God in a very human way. God is walking with Adam and Eve in the garden. Well, how does God walk? If God is spirit, we know that God is spirit. Well, God manifests himself in this world, and so there's some interesting things there. Yeah, Christian's got a good point. Yeah, okay. So Jacob likely wrestled with the pre-incarnate. Yeah, so you guys are in dialogue with each other. Good. Yeah, how does getting rid of God make the world more just? That's such a good question, because it's like I've always thought about this when it comes to difficult passages in the Bible. And I said this in the podcast. I said Christianity has not been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried. And every difficult passage that I've come to, I see people trying to use that solution. Well, it must be that the Bible doesn't have the authority that I thought it had, or maybe we should adjust the authority of the Bible when it comes to building our worldview or something like that. It's like, well, as soon as you do that, you end up with more problems than you have answers, and so you sort of maintain that it's really probably me that needs to adjust. It's not that the Bible has it wrong here, and again, I say that from my Christian worldview. Yes, I have a bias there, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to move my microphone. Hopefully it's not too loud. Yes, I have a bias there or whatever, but it seems like the Bible has proven itself time and time again, and I'm aware of my own weakness, and so I'm far more comfortable with the Bible as my guide because I understand my own fallibility and human depravity, which is, again, it kind of takes us back to this atheist question of like, okay, so who are we really, maybe I'll actually go back to I keep threatening to use my Twitter post to guide this conversation, and I'm just not doing a very good job of it. But it's the I'll get it. Maybe I won't. Yeah, so I create for myself 100 new problems by trying to get rid of the thing that seems inconvenient in front of me. What I'm doing in that moment is I'm putting my human reason above God's divine revelation, and I'm not in submission to God's divine revelation anymore. But then again, it's like, whose world is this? I didn't create this world. So it's better to be in submission to God's divine revelation, and this is the sin of Adam. And so as I'm it's like Adam was like, well, you know what? Like, I think I'm going to come up with my own ideas. I'm going to do it my own way. I see this tree. And in fact, and maybe I'll do a video on this, but like, in a way, Adam doesn't want to take the tree, the knowledge. Adam doesn't want to take the fruit because he knows full well that God told him not to. Right? So what does he do? In a sense, he uses Eve to take the fruit. Paul later tells us this. He said it was Eve that was deceived, but Adam was not deceived. I think it's in Timothy, 1st or 2nd Timothy, and I'm so bad at addresses. Just it's if you Google search, we know that Adam was not deceived. It was Eve who was deceived, and it's in that whole section of like, women and men relationships that people really don't like about the Bible, or whatever. But it's right there, and he says Adam wasn't deceived. Adam knew full well what was going on. And in a way, sort of used Eve to get at the fruit. And what you see in Genesis 2 is God's command goes to Adam, and it's not reinstated. So here's Genesis 2:16. God commands Adam. God never reinstates this command to Eve. And so what's implied is that Adam was supposed to teach Eve about the garden. Eve wasn't created at this point. And then we say, well, he must not have, or he kind of let her fall into this or whatever. And so what do you have today? Well, you have human reason, human wisdom that's trying to supersede divine revelation. And so in a way, we have Schaeffer called it amplified humanity, but not divinity. So we're worshiping Adam. Adam means man. We're worshiping man. It's humanism, and like the bad kind of humanism. It's not biblical humanism that gives humanity worth and value. It's this sort of, I guess it's just this. What do I want to call it? It's unfortunate, is what it is, and so that's what we see here. If I believe I do wrong, and a wrong nobody sees, and there is no God, then there is no justice for my action. And I need to be brought to justice. Good point. Because if I do a wrong, and actually it's funny, Alex O'Connor, I appreciate Alex O'Connor. I don't agree with him, but he got Ben Shapiro on this one. He's very clever. He got Ben Shapiro when he was talking to Ben Shapiro to say, well, okay, look, let's just agree that slavery is wrong. It's a moral wrong. It's, whatever. And then so now Ben Shapiro is stuck, like trying to defend slavery, which is exactly what William Lane Craig is stuck doing. He's stuck trying to defend the death of these children, which isn't actually in the text. And I said that in the podcast. It's not the death. There was a passage that he could have quoted that does specifically talk about children, but he didn't use that text, which is, again, funny. But if you feel that it's wrong, well, then it needs correction. But if nobody saw it, yeah. And that's the thing about atheism is it is in a way it sort of it forces you down into this and almost into, if I follow atheism to its logical conclusion, again, maybe this is a straw man. And I was an atheist. I didn't grow up in the church. I converted to Christianity from atheism, and so it's funny now that I have these atheists trying to deconvert me or whatever. At least that's the way it feels to me. Convert or else, right? That's what they're saying to me. And so I follow that sort of atheist, line of reasoning, and it puts me into a reductionist naturalism. And even Richard Dawkins kind of admits this. He's like, well, we just dance to our DNA. That's just what it is. Well, that's horrible. So if we dance to our DNA, then why are you so pissed off that Israel goes into Canaan and wages war? They're just dancing to their DNA. They're just doing what's right to them. They're just preserving their genetic lineage. So back off. But Richard Dawkins doesn't back off. Alex O'Connor doesn't back off. They want to hold the Bible to a moral standard that they smuggled from the Bible. I'm not an atheist, and I can only tell you that as a Christian, I care because I've come into real contact with Jesus. I believe that. And that coming into contact with the person of Jesus is transformative for me and has transformed me from a person who naturally would not care into a person who does. That's my testimony. Take it for what it is. Maybe I'm deluded and I'm believing in a God who doesn't exist and my experience is just some sort of whatever. Fine, okay? But at least it transformed me into a person who doesn't care, into a person who does. Because naturally, what's bred into my DNA and what I see in the natural world is that it can be kind of like nasty, brutal, and short. So why do I care? I care because I believe that people are made in the image of God for a purpose, to come into a knowledge of God and to worship God in that truth. Now, I don't know why the atheists care. I don't know why the atheists care about my belief in God. They seem to care very deeply. They just want to be right. I don't know. Let me know. And if you're an atheist and if you're, found my video, like, welcome in. Welcome into the dialogue. We're doing things differently here. I'm not it's so funny because, like, again, I agree with Alex O'Connor in a lot of this. I agreed with Destiny in some of the part that I watched, and I have to confess that I didn't watch the whole thing. So welcome in, and that's why Paul, and I'll get to it, but that's why Paul comes in so clutch here. Okay, so what are we saying? I'm saying that naturally I wouldn't care. I just wouldn't. My natural bent is to look out for me, to care for the people that I think are valuable but don't really have any value because we all just kind of like sprung up here and there's no point. Yeah, McMo, welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, it's a Saturday. I mean, we're chilling. Like, thanks for hanging out, guys, and ladies, and friends and combatants, whoever's here. Like, welcome. I don't usually stream on a Saturday, but this whole YouTube channel is an experiment. So glad you guys are here. And I hope you find it meaningful, and I hope that we can continue the dialogue. So that's what we're gonna do. And so the sort of the Alex O'Connor fanboys, okay, if that's offensive, I'm sorry, who have descended on my channel, who've tried to convert me to atheism. Like, I appreciate it. I appreciate it because it gives me a chance to refine my own ideas. I find it strange that Richard Dawkins and those like him are so concerned about a God who to them does not exist. And this is the tension. This is the cognitive dissonance that I see. And if you don't believe in the biblical Christian God, if you don't believe in any God, if you're an atheist, help me understand this. Like, truly, because I see the cognitive dissonance there. And this is from Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it. Petty. Unjust. Unforgiving control freak, vindictive, bloodthirsty, ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capricious, malevolent, bully. Wow, Dawkins, you spent a lot of time crafting that paragraph. You put a lot of pathos into that. But why? God who doesn't exist. Why are you so upset? If this God doesn't exist, what is this? If this God doesn't exist. I think that this is an outcry. if you see it. I mean, I think this is a cry of somebody living in the world of God that God created. And they're clinging desperately to an ideology. And I don't get it, man. This sounds very sad to me. Why do you care so deep? Why are you so angry at a God who doesn't exist? If this God didn't exist, you would just walk away. Leave me to my delusion. Right? Right? I mean, is that fair? Why write a whole book? I mean, and the God Delusion is like a tome, man. I mean, yeah, he put a lot of work into that bad boy. Made a lot of money too. So, maybe we found the reason. So before I wander off too far down the path off of productive dialogue, which is why I've said I don't really want to be doing apologetics and things like that. I do want to maybe pull people from this apologetics thing where, like I'm saying, like William Lane Craig, unfortunately, has to have comments turned off on his video. Why don't we listen to some wisdom from those who have gone before us? I think that this will play. I think you guys can hear this, but this is Mr. PVK.
At this moment, of course, Destiny begins to recognize that there's something else going on in this. And the something else that's going on in this is making this not really a lot of fun, or at least not terribly productive, because we're just wielding different statistics at each other. And we've got a fair amount of skepticism with respect to these statistics, and we're dealing with levels of problems that are actually really hard to get at. Now, again, if I say that in the abstract, people say, "Oh, okay." But then if I point to something where each of us has a stake, no, I'm right, whether it's climate change or immigration or nuclear power or COVID vaccine, and maybe you are. In fact, at this moment, of course, Destiny begins to recognize that.
So you hear that, right? It's like the conversation is no longer fun. I really appreciate that.
There's something else going on in this. And the something else that's going on in this is making this not really a lot of fun, or at least not terribly productive.
Yeah. So that's... Unfortunately, I felt like that's where the conversation between William Lane Craig and Alex O'Connor went. Again, I think Craig has a position, divine command morality, that he wanted to stick to. It makes sense to some degree. Like, as a philosophy, it makes sense. I don't disagree with divine command morality. It feels clunky to me. That's like, oh, there's morality because... It's like God sets the standard, but then God can sort of like break that standard whenever he wants. At least that's what it sounds like to me from if I put like sort of my atheist hat back on. And so like, of course, if you hate God and you think God is this megalomaniacal, vindictive, that Dawkins is talking about, then now you're telling me that God can break God holds us to these standards, but he can break them whenever he wants. It just feels like a clunky way to try to defend your position rather than, okay, Alex, I hear you. Dawkins, I hear you. And Red is talking about this in the chat. Like, I hear you. Like, you're putting words to things that I understand. Like, I feel the same way. This is uncomfortable for me. Like these passages, they're not easy to grapple with. But I'm willing to enter into that wrestling. And I'm willing to listen. And I'm willing to have my ideas shifted and changed. And that's the fun, I think. It's not easy, but that's, we were talking about exercise earlier. That's where the light bulb starts to go on and you go, oh my gosh, yes, I didn't see it. And now Alex O'Connor has helped me see it, and Destiny has helped me see it, and Jordan Peterson has helped me see it, and Paul Vanderklay has helped me see it. But you got to be willing to see it. You can't be ideologically committed. So if you want to go back to an old video that I did with Dawkins and Russel Brand, that's there. I need the atheists to descend on my channel to help me sort through my ideas. I thought I left this Lewis. Oh yeah, this Lewis quote. Oh, there it is. There it is. Lewis is writing in the Screwtape Letters, and he takes on the voice of a demon, instructing a higher demon, instructing the lower demon, and he says, "It sounds as if you suppose that argument was the way to keep him out of the enemy's clutches." And when he says this, he means God, because he's writing as a demon, so his enemy is God. That might have been so if he had lived a few centuries earlier, at a time when human skill knew pretty well when a thing was proved and when it was not, when you helped me adjust my worldview and helped me find the truth. And if it was proved, they really believed it. And this is to Jordan Peterson's point when asked, do you believe that God exists? He says, well, I live like I do. I live like, because my belief influences my behavior. My thoughts produce actions. They still connected thinking with doing and were prepared to alter their way of life as the result of a chain of reasoning. This is Lewis saying, we were there a few centuries ago, but we're not there anymore. But what with the weekly press and the other such weapons, we, and he's talking as a demon again, have largely altered that. Your man has been accustomed ever since he was a boy to have a dozen incompatible philosophies dancing about together inside his head. And that is the cognitive dissonance that I'm talking about, that I see in a way from the atheist perspective. It's like you live in God's world and God has put rules in place to play the game. And you don't want to play the game, and you want to deny that God created this world, and yet you're going to use something like morality to try to deny the existence of God, going back to Dawkins, going back to Alex O'Connor. I feel that's a pretty tenuous position to be in, frankly. It'd just be easier to get over the uncomfortability of living in a world. And I think here's what's so unfortunate is like the God that they're talking about, I don't believe in either. I don't believe that God exists. So we're there. We're both atheists in that respect. If this is your God, this is Dawkins writing about what he believes God to be like, what comes into his mind when he thinks of God, which is the most important thing about us, which is why I try to create these dialogues. If this God is the God that comes into Richard Dawkins' mind, then he and I are atheists together. I don't believe in this God. I believe in a God, so I'm not truly an atheist, but I'm playing along, hopefully. Like, I see that we can build... I have a point of agreement with you. Ever since he was a boy, to have a dozen incompatible philosophies dancing about together inside his head. He doesn't think of doctrines as primarily true or false, but as academic or practical, outworn or contemporary. Your primitive superstitions have no place here. It was cool when Harrison Ford said it in Star Wars, but it's not cool anymore, guys. Outworn, contemporary, conventional, or ruthless. This is the point. Jargon, not argument, is our best ally in keeping him from the church. Again, writing as a demon. Jargon, not argument. Well, I'm sorry. That's probably what happened here. Jargon, statistics, facts, facts, it's all fine. It's all information, but it has to ascend to the point of dialogue. It has to ascend to the point of argument. And when Lewis is writing about argument, he's writing about a good, productive type of argument. he's not thinking of William Lane Craig and Alex O'Connor. Except that the trap that Alex O'Connor set for William Lane Craig was super helpful for me. It's like, okay, I see what you're doing. I have to sort of rethink myself. Like, what is the Bible teaching about slavery? How have I rationalized that in my own life? And have I left the path of reason and curiosity, and accepted the ideological blinders that I think so many people have. Excuse me, as I bump into my microphone. And unfortunately, I think that when Dawkins went on Russel Brand, we saw that. We saw Russel Brand, a person who, and this is so funny too, because, Russel Brand recently, I don't want to get off on a whole Russel Brand thing, but he certainly seems like a person who is willing to have the dialogue and not just be ideologically focused. And yet Dawkins just kind of came with his ideology. In a way, I think William Lane Craig was a little bit blinded by his philosophical position. I like Mick Mo's comment here. So many millennials destroying boomers with memes and vibes. Yeah, that's the world that we're in. Yeah. Hopefully you're not having to watch on 2 times speed to catch up. But sorry. And okay, so just as a point of clarification, and I'm sorry if I get your name wrong. Diagoras of Melos, you don't believe in the God Yahweh in the Bible. No, I believe in the God of the Bible, but I believe that oftentimes we contrive a different God in our minds. That's what I see Richard Dawkins and Alex O'Connor doing. And when they give me their view of God, when they say, well, this, the God, and then they fill in the blanks and they try to define God, I go, well, yeah, I don't believe in that God either. I believe in the God as best as I can of what the Bible is portraying, but I'm fully aware of my own limitations as I pursue that knowledge of that God who has been revealed through Scripture. God has revealed himself also in the natural world, and most profoundly in the person of Christ. So that's where I am when it comes to forming my idea of God. I think that we often, and I'll say this as a Christian, my view of God needs a lot of work, because I will often realize that the God, that it's different than the God that I see in the Bible, and then I have to adjust, and so that's where I am. And the community of people helps me do that. The dialogue, the dialogos, helps me to do that. So when an atheist comes in, and actually I put one of the comments here in this thread, when an atheist comes in and says, hey, look at this, look at that, look at the other, I go, okay, I will. And then I have to refine my view of God as I read Scripture more deeply. Does that dramatically change? I don't know that I don't know that I make that dramatic of a change, but I certainly refine my view of who God is. I hope that helps. I wasn't saying that I don't believe in the God of the Bible. What I'm saying is we often create for ourselves a God of our own imagination. We imagine what God is like, and then we have to ask the question, does the God that we're imagining line up with the God who is there, the God who really does exist and has revealed himself to us in Scripture, in nature, and through the person of Christ? And that's where I feel like as a Christian, I need to come into contact. And that's why Alex O'Connor can't see it. And that sounds bad, but it's like, I get it, man. I get that this is a problem. And when you come into contact with the person of Jesus, things start to make sense. I say that with a little bit of like so much of my life went upside down after coming into contact with the person of Jesus, but I'm just trying to make sense of it. Excuse me. Gosh, I keep hitting the microphone. I'm sorry. Hopefully that's not too loud. Dawkins' words remind me of Lisp poetry, which conveys something, but it's not Dawkins. And I agree. Like, I agree that Dawkins is conveying something here that is, I mean, like, look, this is a clever statement. Like, his thing in the, I mean, that is clever. He worked on that. And again, I don't believe that God exists, which is sad, because when you put Dawkins' statement and you project that onto the God of the Bible, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to read any text in the Bible that sounds bad as being horrific, of course. And you'll miss, like Alex does, this whole thing. I mean, for me, as a person, again, I'm a Christian. I try to have a biblically formed worldview. I see these words, offer peace, make peace. They stand out and they're glowing and they're flashing red at me. They're saying, this is Deuteronomy. This is Moses expositing the law for the Hebrew people prior to the conquest of Canaan. Moses doesn't go into that conquest. So he takes the time in Deuteronomy to go back over the law, and God is talking to the people of Israel, and he's saying, this is the way you need to do it. And Deuteronomy is the context that we need to read the book of Joshua through, because later on, Alex O'Connor is going to quote from the book of Joshua, but he's not taking into consideration the book of Deuteronomy. So you make it. That's an exegetical mistake there. You're taking a text out of context, and then you're saying, "Well, see how evil this God is." And when you get to the Joshua one, I mean, it's pretty obvious what he's doing. He completely he doesn't even misread the Bible. He just lies. And if you want, maybe we'll jump to that. But basically, like, and I won't play the clips for these videos because YouTube doesn't like me doing that when I'm live streaming. But I left links, I think, in the description of this video. So basically, when it comes to it, Alex O'Connor, up until this point, William Lane Craig is like, look, these people could leave. They could leave. They could leave Israel. They don't have to stay and fight. They don't have far to walk, right? Israel's down here. They're in this sort of like Sinai Peninsula area. And it's not a big land. It's basically from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River. You could go north and you could avoid Israel as they come and do this conquest. You could avoid them. You could go north. You could leave here. As soon as you walk across the border, you're fine. You're free. Like, you're good. The nation of Israel is not going to war against you. They could, I guess they could have got on boats and gone to the Mediterranean or whatever. Or they could have made peace. Where am I? You could have made peace. Now they could be your forced labor. Okay, people are going to cringe at that. They're going to be your slaves, and that's maybe a whole nother podcast for another day, to understand what the Bible meant by slavery, and to not, and I think this is one of the other problems that Alex and other people make, not to be anachronistic. When you look at the text, what he's doing is he's saying, well, this is abhorrent, what Israel is doing. Look, and I'm not here to defend Israel. What I'm saying is God told Israel to do this thing a certain way. Whether they did it that way, that's, again, maybe another podcast for another day. But what the text is telling us is make peace. So Deuteronomy, as Moses expositing the law and God giving the law to the Hebrew people, supersedes or provides the context, the greater context, for any other passage that comes after it. And the Bible is a difficult book to interpret. I get it, because these books communicate to each other. So the Bible is a collection of books. So Deuteronomy is a separate book from the book of Joshua, and yet Deuteronomy is telling us what is happening in the book of Joshua when it comes to the conquest of particularly the city of Ai, which Alex is going to bring up. So peace is glaring at me. And then I don't want to be anachronistic when it comes to understanding what it meant for Israel to take slaves. So anachronism is when I take a modern idea of what my modern mind says slavery is like. And you're right. Slavery, to my modern mind, is abhorrent, is evil, is an injustice. But is that the way the Hebrew people understood it thousands of years ago in a completely different time, in a completely different place. Somebody could say, well, yeah, they would have seen it just like all the surrounding nations would have seen slavery, which was likewise abhorrent, maybe even worse. Not so, though, because Israel has this law, and they need to live by this law. So the Hebrew people had a different view of slavery because they were following Yahweh. They were not following the pagan gods of Baal and Moloch and all these others that frankly Israel, and I know this will make some people cringe, rescued the Canaanite people out of. Because that's another way of looking at it. And I understand that this is difficult. But a woman or a child coming into Israel as a slave, and I'll just use the term slave, with all of its modern context, and I'll just say don't be anachronistic. Don't read that modern context back into the biblical context. A woman or a child coming into the nation of Israel as a slave would have been protected by the law of God. Rather than living as a slave in the nation, in the land of Canaan, where they could just be sacrificed to Moloch, put on a burning edifice to the god of Baal, and alive, just sort of burned there on this metal idol. Is that what we're saying? We're saying that's okay. It's okay as long, like, let's leave the Canaanites alone. You know, you can't go in and conquest their land. That was the other big thing, and I don't necessarily want to go off on that, but you gotta look. Is this, and I get it. People who hate God, people who, like Richard Dawkins, think that if you think that I'm talking about this God that Richard Dawkins is talking about, please don't misunderstand me. When I say God is rescuing people, I actually mean the infinite, personal, loving creator who created each and every individual person after his image for a purpose. That purpose is a beautiful purpose. It's to come into worship and harmony with the creator. So I think of that God as a rescuer. I really do. Doesn't mean that these passages aren't difficult. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly, Sandy. It's just not. Slavery thousands of years ago during the Hebrew conquest of Canaan is not slavery today. You have to separate the two. And again, you have to do the hard work. Now, were the pagan nations involved in a kind of slavery that is probably even worse than our modern concept of slavery? Yeah, but not the Hebrew people, because the Hebrew people had the law of God. They're different. They're different people, and that's why they were always meant to be a light to the Gentile nations, to these pagan nations. They were meant to say, hey guys, stop sacrificing your children to Baal, because that's evil. Well, you can't come in here as a foreign invader and tell us what's right and wrong. Okay, well, again, now we're back to the whole question of morality from an atheistic standpoint, which again is shaky. It's like, oh, I'm glad Israel went in there and said, hey guys, stop burning your children. It's evil. And if you're offended by that, then I don't know what that means about you. I don't want to say it like that because people freak out on me. All right. Where am I? I will. Yeah. Okay. So I think you guys are on with the whole slavery thing. I think maybe I made my point. I should leave it, but I appreciate that. Because yeah, I mean, and to the point of like sort of the again, sort of the atheists sort of wielding morality. Where did they get the morality from? This is okay. That was Paul Vanderklay's clip. Where's this destiny? This I thought was actually interesting, and I feel like this kind of gives me the context for the dialogue that I find myself in, having made a video about Alex O'Connor. Again, sort of appreciate Alex O'Connor, but I think he's being disingenuous in this one. Destiny says this.
It's good analysis, but I feel like it just gets wielded sometimes in one direction, and then people kind of miss that it completely and fully describes their entire side as well. And the thing that I feel like the only solution for this is, you hinted at it. It's more than just conversation, although that's a good start. We have to go back to inhabiting similar areas. We have to go back to inhabiting similar like media landscapes. I think that the issue that we're running into right now more than anything else is people live in completely separate realities at the moment, such that if we were even to describe basic reality, it's good analysis, but I feel like it just gets...
Good analysis that isn't wielded in the same direction. So it's ironic you have an atheist on one side sort of critical of the Bible, but then not being critical of the atheism, and then wondering, well, where did I get this morality from? And likewise, we as a Christian, as a person who, again, I'm trying to maintain a biblical worldview. Anytime I hear stuff like this, I mean, that's literally the reason I made the video. It's the reason I'm live streaming about it today, is I do try to take it with the right kind of seriousness and say, man, I gotta do some looking here, because this is important. And I just think it's so funny. I'm nodding my head along, agreeing with Destiny, saying, yeah, you're exactly right. And what's the problem? This is so good. Like, what is the problem that he points to? He says, we're not, and I'll use my own word here. This is not what Destiny said, but this is what I heard. This is what I'm like, okay, we need communion. We need a common union. We need to occupy the same sort of digital landscape or whatever he said. We need to come into communion with one another. Man, how is that possible? Now, I think I made a video on this. I think the only way it's possible is through the Spirit of God, I think. I mean, give me a second here. Like bear with me on that one. How would that be possible? In a world where we are, I won't be able to find it. Maybe it was this one. It was either the Dialogos video, and I did one on Jordan Peterson and communion a while back. Gosh, bear with me. It's probably this one. The power of communion and the end of tyranny. Yeah. How do you, outside of the person of Christ, outside of the Spirit of God, foster communion, togetherness, common union, unity amongst people who are so diverse and so distinctly different? I actually think this mysterious origins of Christianity, I think we touched on that as well back with the Brian Murray Rescue video. And I appreciate that I have these videos to reference. So, I mean, again, we're sort of building dialogues. I hope that doesn't just sound like me. I'm here. I'm on my podcast, shilling my podcast. I hope that's okay. I hope I have permission to do that, or am I morally obligated to some standard that's above me? Oh, yeah. Okay. So there you have that. I think that that's exactly right. I think that we need communion. I hope that that's what this podcast is. I hope that that's where we're going. I don't want to foster the type of sort of apologetics tit for tat that unfortunately some people have manifested that causes them to turn off comments on their YouTube channels. I want to have comments on my YouTube channel so I can read through these and sift through these. And I hear you guys like, you're like, yeah, okay, that was cool. I that was super helpful. And that, like, that helps me get through all the other, like, some of these people were just, you know what I noticed? I didn't realize this. William Lane Craig has some haters out there. And that was eventually, I think, one of the comments that I deleted. It was just like, dude, it's just like vile. Like, people just hate William Lane Craig, and don't use my channel to foster that. You know, if you've got something deep down in your heart, for some reason you hate William Lane Craig, take it up with Craig, man. Like, I actually thought that throughout this video, I was being pretty, I was being pretty kind to Alex O'Connor and kind of critical to William Lane Craig, if anything. But because he brought it up, and I did cover it in that video, but we were talking about fallacies, and we were talking about kind of like a very clear, and like, no, not the Atlas. Where am I? He has this Joshua passage, and so just listen, go back and listen to Alex O'Connor quote this passage and tell me that he's being genuine. Tell me that he has a genuine curiosity. I hope he does. Because I think, like Joe Rogan, we started this talking about Joe Rogan and why Joe Rogan's podcast is popular. I think Joe Rogan has an honest curiosity. I think he's the right kind of skeptic. And I see people that have that honest curiosity find the truth. It's the people that are ideologically committed that just go around in circles, and it's tough to watch. And that was the Russel Brand, Richard Dawkins video. And so when you look at this Joshua passage, it is what Alex quotes is the end here. He quotes Joshua 20:24. Now, when Israel had finished killing all the inhabitants of Ai in the field in the wilderness where they pursued them, Alex O'Connor says, see, Israel doesn't give these innocent people a chance to flee. And then they went back into the city and they killed all the women and they killed all the children and all the feeble, disabled people. See how horrible your God is. Well, I'm sorry, Alex, you didn't read the passage. So that's horrible and evil. If you're using this as a pretext to not believe in God, do the work. It's not that Israel pursued the inhabitants of Ai into the field in the wilderness where they pursued them. It's not that Israel is gunning down innocent people who are fleeing for their freedom. That's what Alex made it sound like. It's an ambush. That's what God says. And I covered this in the podcast episode, so I don't feel the need to go back over it again. It's an ambush. God says, look, this is how you're going to take the city, just like Jericho. Again, Israel is in a position where they have less strength there, and they have to besiege these cities that are fortified. So Yahweh says, hey, I got some ideas for you. Here's how you're going to do it. And when it comes to Ai, he's like, look, here's what you're going to do. You're going to divide your people. I want some of you to go out, and I want you to fake like you're attacking the city, and then I want you to withdraw out into the wilderness. And when Ai pursues you, I want some people to come behind them and burn their city. So as they're pursuing you, they'll turn. They'll turn and look back. And they'll see their city, and it'll turn them into confusion. Now, you being weaker, you can ambush them from both sides. That's how you have to take the city of Ai. So when you're reading this passage, it's not that Israel pursued innocent people out into the wilderness as those people were fleeing for their freedom. It's the inhabitants of Ai pursuing Israel out into the field, and then Israel killing them in the field. Now, this is war. Is this easy to talk about? No, it's not easy to talk about. But if you go back and listen to the last few minutes of this video, and again, if William Lane Craig had just had a Bible in front of him, this conversation would go very differently. And Alex basically says, see, God tells Israel to go out into the field, pursue these people, even though they're innocent and they're running for their freedom. All right, he didn't say it exactly like that. I mean, he did say this was like this morally repugnant thing that God allowed Israel to do. But in context, it's just war, man. And I say that like it's just war. Like, that's horrible enough. We live in a broken world where those things take place. But it's you're so egregiously misusing the text that I have a hard time believing that it was an innocent mistake. Because the context is right there. You just read the context of Joshua 8, and it becomes very clear that it's the inhabitants of Ai pursuing Israel into the wilderness, not Israel pursuing the inhabitants of Ai into the wilderness. But that's what Alex O'Connor made it sound like, and unfortunately, William Lane Craig didn't catch it. That's the world we live in. So you can listen to that and tell me what you think. If you think Alex is setting a trap, I think it kind of is. Ironically, it's about an ambush. Ironically, the biblical text that they're talking about is about an ambush. And I think, in a way, that's what the conversation is too. Funny old world, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, well, okay. And I appreciate that, Sandy. And again, I'm sorry, guys. Catching up from the top, mostly not working, is in the house. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Aloha. And, man, I feel like I could go, this live stream could go like another hour based on that. Because look, and I did this in the live or in the podcast episode to some degree, but when you look at the whole context here of Israel's conquest of Canaan, you have God in Genesis 15 saying, the sin of the Amalekite is not yet complete. I'm going to wait. How long does God wait? 400 years while Israel is in Egypt, in slavery. Now, again, we could have a whole nother discussion about biblical slavery and what does this mean, because we're all slaves to something. You could be a slave. I'll do dreaded air quotes there because I know that word comes with a lot of emotions and context. You could be a slave to the God who created you for a beautiful and wonderful purpose, or you could be a slave to the God of your own invention, this amplified humanity. You could follow in the way of Adam and live in that disobedience and just end in worshiping the self, essentially. 400 years God waits, right? So that's the patience of God, 400 years. And then you have the conquest. But what do? Israel wanders for 40 years. So that's 440 years. And now Israel's, really like knocking on the door here. They're chilling. Everybody in Canaan should have known this. They should have realized that, geez, the Egyptians just fell to this group of Hebrews. Like that means business. They've got this God that's going before them. There's this pillar of cloud. There's this pillar of fire. Like we should maybe leave. Maybe we should get out of here because there's some freaking weird stuff happening. Egypt's gone. Well, the warriors that went out to war again to retake the Hebrews, they're gone. There's this pillar of cloud. There's this pillar of fire. What are they eating? Like, how are they even surviving for 40 years in this wilderness? God is sending food. Maybe our gods aren't worth serving at this point. And that should have been, again, the Hebrew people were supposed to be a light to the Gentile nations. That could have happened. So there's all these reasons why God sort of withheld his judgment until Deuteronomy, where it says, if you go into these cities and you take these cities, make peace. That's the law that Yahweh sets. Make peace. If people will make peace with you, then extend them peace. If they will war against you, make war against them. So now you go all the way back to this passage in Joshua. And one of the things that Alex O'Connor says is that Israel goes back into the city and what they must have slaughtered all the innocent women and children and all the disabled. No, because they have a law from Deuteronomy 20 that says, if they will make peace, you be a people of peace. So, Alex O'Connor, he lied. He lied. But we're here talking about it. And hopefully it's helpful. Hopefully it's beneficial. Hopefully we're learning. Hopefully we're growing. Hopefully we're doing this opponent processing thing where, just like Paul was saying, like, is it hard? Yeah, but hopefully it's meaningful. Hopefully we're sifting through this and finding the meaningful points, because ultimately, if you watch the podcast that I did, I mean, ultimately this whole question, that's lovely, leads me to the person of Christ. Why does God allow evil and suffering to exist? And I say that specifically, allow. Why does God allow? Because God could, he would have been just to take Adam and Eve and judge them, okay, so what is the consequence that he said, if you take of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will die. So he would have been just in just letting them die, starting over. But he doesn't. Why? Because he's got a better plan. What's the plan? Jesus is the plan. Jesus is the plan. And our Creator is not disconnected from this problem that we're grappling with. Our Creator has entered into the problem. So I hope that this is meaningful. I hope that we're learning, because, again, and I've got this comment highlighted here in my post. I appreciate it. I mean, I do. I don't agree with everything in this post, but I think I can learn from it. I can learn from it. Alex says, you say Alex was probably disingenuous in making these references, and William Lane Craig misses them, but I don't think it's at all clear that this is the case. In fact, it's plausible that William Lane Craig knew the details that you're referencing and decided to engage the way he did, because the distinctions you're making now would have been pointless to quibble about. I don't think so. If you're going to bring up a biblical text as a justification for why you don't believe the God of the Bible, then it's very important to look at the text. I got people shouting. Okay. Just watching the chat here, making sure I see capital letters, and it makes me nervous. It's not pointless to quibble about. Alex O'Connor brings up a biblical text. We're going to look at the biblical text. I guarantee if William Lane Craig had brought up the thing that you're saying about the actual reading of the text, Alex would have said, fair enough, but from my perspective, these people, this is too small for you guys. And maybe that's still too small, but here, we can do this. Can we? Wait. I'm going to, wait. We can do this. We can do this. Can we do this? Control plus. Oh no. Sorry, this is dumb. There we go. Whatever. I'm still in the way. Sorry. I guarantee you, if William Lane Craig had brought up this thing they're saying about the actual reading of the text, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, we can imagine what they would have said. Alex would have said, fair enough. But from the perspective of these people, that would not be relevant. Okay, why? Fair enough. But all the people who stayed in the city were still slaughtered. Were they? They were still slaughtered? If they want to make peace with them. If they want to war with you, war with them. That's what Deuteronomy 20 says. They weren't slaughtered. They engaged in warfare. I'm not happy about it. But it's not a slaughter. It's not a genocide, the way Alex and others are trying to make it sound. Is that justification? Maybe you think that. I don't know. But I'm just trying to read the text. If we're gonna point to this text, then we need to point to the text. It would have just seemed like a pretty nitpick in context. Again, if you're going to bring up the text, you got to go through it. Then they would have both continued roughly the same way they did. Well, yeah, you might be right on that. And that's the point that Paul Vanderklay is making here. It's like statistics and these little things. It's like, can we just hang out on the beach and chat? I agree. Like, maybe we should. I don't even think it's clear that Alex was disingenuous. Well, again, I don't know what you're looking at. The first distinction would have been irrelevant to an atheist. Your second distinction is something atheists would call a mistake. With a careful reading, but the main point is the discussion is the question of genocide and intent. And that's where I wanted to kind of say, well, I think that my reading of this passage is and maybe ongoing, but it's depicting warfare, which I'm not happy about. But that's what it is. It's war. It's a Bible passage about war. And it's nasty. But it's not genocide. Now, there's another passage you could look at. But in the end, I thought that this comment was good, because you read the next few paragraphs that this person writes, and I'm like, yeah, I agree. I gave it the thumbs up, man. I'll even give it a heart. For now, I'll say this. It's the context of Deuteronomy 20 that I basically was trying to point to, that sets the whole context to the thing. So there you have it. I appreciate the comments, and I hope that what you're seeing on this channel is a willingness to engage in those comments, because I think that those comments, even the ones that I disagree with, and even the ones that I think are kind of like nasty, like I'll still try to engage, because I want to build something different. I want to do something different. That's what I'm trying to do. So I hope this is helpful. I will try to catch up a little bit on chat, and then say adieu. I don't know what you mean by when did they change the day? When did God and his son die? Okay, so David, thanks for being here. But I'm not quite following you. So the followers didn't have time to worry about others. Why this pathway is working for me. Sorry, man. I guess I'm not quite following your thinking there. Yeah, it's not pointless. Jesus is the human interface of God. Yeah, some of these comments, I'm sorry, I must have been from when I was talking. I wasn't. Humans, do you have the spirit of life alive? See, now you know God. How do you follow God? I think Alex's argument is fine from a contemporary standpoint. The problem is how to approach it when it requires some degree of ultra-realism. That ancient civilization is built on these things. Only once civilization is stable will revelation progress and find more latent ways of dealing with enemies. Yeah, and again, I wonder if maybe that's a little bit of sort of the anachronistic problem. That, it's like Israel, and it comes down to this. I was even thinking about this earlier. Maybe this is cringe, but God's sovereignty is the form through which we have freedom. And again, God is the author. He created this world. He wrote the story, right? If you imagine us all in a story, God is the author. You can't, you as a character in that story can't get out of the story. You're in the story. And people who hate God, maybe they freak out about that. People who love God, I'm like, thank God that there's someone writing this story and life isn't just freaking meaningless. And when I see things that seem morally repugnant to me, do I have an answer? Yes. What is it? It's that God is the master chess player. And even though I have freedom, and I do believe that I have freedom within this world, that it's not just deterministic the way the sort of the naturalistic determinism of a Richard Dawkins, where we just dance to our DNA and everything I think and do is just responding to my environment and chemicals bouncing around in my head and synapses firing off, and I'm just in a sense I've sort of come full circle into this sort of reductionist naturalism. No, I think I am free because of God's sovereignty, because God is a master chess player who sets the board, knows the rules, you play along, but every move is ultimately pointing towards his end. What is his end? The restoration of humanity through his son. So I feel like there's an ultimate solution to the problems that are staring me in the face. And I do see them. But I also see that there's a solution that God has provided. Studying Noah Hylod. Okay, sorry. McMo. Okay, I think you guys are talking to each other, maybe. No speaking in tongues. Oh, Mo, maybe he's behind. I don't know. I get confused. I want to read chat, but it always is a little bit hard for me to find what we're talking about, because I'm in this other space. I'm in this other I'm processing language out loud, and then I try to read it. I've been studying the Noah High Law and Jewish point of view. I'm looking at sites that comment on this, and some interesting reading. Warnings sent if people change their ways, they're spared, etc. Yeah, I mean, the warnings were sent. Excuse me again as I hit my the warnings were sent. God provides so much time for people to change their ways, and it's like, oh my gosh, how horrible is this God that he's trying to rescue people out of this paganism and repent. I know that sounds horrible to the people who hate God, like, repent of your ways, stop burning children, and come be a part of God's kingdom. People who hate God don't like that idea. But God sent warnings. He provided time. He gave you a way. If you want to reject God, he provided the Canaanites a way of escape. Now, if you don't like the fact that this seems like Israel is this invading force, and these, you're kicking people off their land and all that, it's like, this was sort of my point in some of the comments section of this video was, I'm sorry, whose land is it? Israel, this foreign invading force, is just kicking these innocent people off their land. Well, they're not innocent, and it's not their land. I'm sorry to say it like that, but who created the land? Did the Canaanites create the land? No, God created the land. Who's God? He's the master chess player. He wrote this story. He created the land. So who does he give the land to? Abraham and his descendants. You may not like that, but that's what the Creator set for his own purpose. So you may not like his purpose, but it's his land, and it's not my business to tell God what he can do with his land. He promised it to Abraham. It's his land. It doesn't belong to the Canaanites. It belongs to its Creator and is being used for the Creator's purpose. Okay. Kind of random, but feel free to ignore. No, I'm not going to ignore it. I love random stuff. Once we get to heaven, is there a goal? Once we get there, yeah, the goal will not be the thing anymore. It's kind of like goals. Okay, yeah. Okay, so here, I have a weird view of heaven, but maybe that's the hope that we're pointing to. So maybe that's a good spot to maybe land the plane, is that heaven is the world remade. You think of Jesus in his post-resurrection scenes with his disciples. He still has a human body, but it's a glorified body. It's perfected. He still has his scars, which is really interesting. God's going to do the same thing with creation. The world remains. That this globe that we're on still remains. He just remakes it back to his initial purpose with the garden, harmony with the Creator. And it just so happens that God's plan is to go through all of that we're going through so that he can remake it. Whose heaven is it? Good question. It's the Creator's. And so I like C.S. Lewis's, he wrote a book, and I'm spacing out on the name. Anyway, he wrote a book where he talks about heaven. He talks about this journey into heaven, and when he gets to heaven, The Great Divorce is the name of the book. When he gets to heaven, he can't pick up a flower because the flower is more real. It's made of a solider stuff, and he looks down at himself and he realizes he's a ghost by comparison. And so I think the purpose then, I think we're still going to learn. We still have finite minds. We still are finite beings, and God is infinite, and so we'll never exhaust God. So think of an infinite, loving, all-powerful God who knows you exactly the way you were created for your exact purpose, and the loving relationship of perpetual relationship, perpetual knowledge. And that's what's so funny about what Destiny said. He's basically saying we need communion. We need communion with one another, yes, so that these little, we call them arguments today, and they're sort of like the non-productive type of argument. But we have these things today that C.S. Lewis was talking about as jargon. And we need communion with one another. So I'm glad you're here. But we also need communion with our Creator. That's heaven. It's actually a banquet feast. It's pretty awesome. Okay. And I think with that hope, man, with that, and I know that the atheists will say that that's like mythology and just this made up hope to make you feel better about life. And it's like, well, I mean, if there's no God and there's no purpose to life, then at least I get to live as though there is meaning in an ultimately meaningless life. But I don't think that's true. I think there is ultimate meaning, and I think we've found it. So coming into contact with that and coming into harmony with that, that is the great hope. It is here right now. It will be fully consummated in that time that God has set. And I think that's a great hope. I think it's beautiful. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for hanging in there. This is a long one. I've never done a stream that's much more than an hour, so I appreciate you guys being here. Again, I love that I'm sort of building a catalog of these conversations that you guys can look at. I'll continue to sort of clip things off the internet when it comes to how I use Twitter and stuff like that. And there's a little bit of a lag, but for now, I will just say have a great Saturday and or whatever day it is that you happen to be catching this, and I will catch you in the next one.